I was supposed to remember my retirement party as the happiest night of my life. Instead, it's the night I realized my own daughter-in-law tried to drug me. The music was playing. My coworkers were laughing. My son Daniel was giving a speech about how proud he was of me. And that's when I saw Melissa leaning over my plate. Her hand moved quickly, too quickly. Something small dropped into my food. She looked up immediately, watching my face. I didn't say a word. I just smiled and quietly switched my plate with her mother's. And 20 minutes later, Linda Carter was the one who started collapsing at my retirement party. Pay attention to this detail because it's going to matter later. I didn't switch that plate out of cruelty. I switched it because every instinct inside me was screaming that something was wrong, and I needed proof. And honestly, in that moment, I wasn't thinking about consequences. I was thinking about survival. But before I tell you what happened after Linda collapsed, you need to understand what the months leading up to that night looked like. Because the retirement party wasn't the beginning. It was supposed to be the ending. The final move in a plan Melissa had been building for almost a year. Let me explain. My name is Susan. For 38 years, I worked for the Phoenix Unified School District in Arizona, not as a teacher. I managed budgets, audited programs, made sure the numbers added up so schools could keep running. Every dollar I tracked meant books in classrooms, lunches for kids, repairs for aging buildings. It wasn't glamorous, but it mattered. And when retirement finally came, it wasn't just the end of a job. It was the end of a life chapter. I raised my son Daniel alone after my husband Miguel died, when Daniel was only 10. I worked full-time, managed the house, helped with homework, drove him to soccer practice, and somehow showed up at every school play. Daniel used to tell people his mom was stronger than Superman. So seeing him at 36, standing near the stage at my retirement party, smiling proudly, should have made me feel nothing but happiness. And for a while, it did. Beside him stood his wife, Melissa. She'd been part of our family for almost 4 years. When Daniel first introduced her, she seemed charming, confident, well-spoken, worked in real estate. She had this way of walking into a room and immediately taking control of the conversation. At first, I admired that about her. But here's the thing. Over the past year, something about Melissa had started making me uncomfortable. I couldn't explain it at first. There was nothing obvious. No fights, no shouting, nothing dramatic. Just small things, little comments, questions that felt a little too personal. The first time I noticed it was about 8 months before the party. Melissa came over for Sunday dinner. While my granddaughter Emily played in the living room, Melissa sat at the kitchen table and asked casually, "So, Susan, what happens to your pension after you retire?" I shrugged and told her it was straightforward, monthly payments, enough to live comfortably. She nodded thoughtfully. Then she asked if the house was paid off. I paused. "Yes," I said slowly. "It's been paid off for years." She smiled. "Honestly, you're in a better financial position than most people your age." It sounded like a compliment, but something about the way she said it felt calculated. I brushed it aside. People talk about money sometimes, but then the questions kept coming. Over the following months, Melissa asked about my savings. She asked if I had a will. She asked who would manage my finances if something happened to me. I laughed it off once. Hopefully nothing happens to me anytime soon. But Melissa didn't laugh. She leaned forward and said, "You'd be surprised how quickly things can change when people get older. And what I didn't understand back then was that every single one of those conversations was a brick in a wall she was building around me. Then came the comments about my memory, small things. If I misplaced my reading glasses, she'd say lightly, "See, this is why it's good to plan ahead for when memory starts slipping." If I forgot the name of a restaurant, she'd chuckle and say, "Totally normal at your age." At first, I thought she was joking, but after a while, I noticed something unsettling. She always made those comments when Daniel was nearby. One evening, Daniel repeated something she'd said. "She just worries about you, Mom. Melissa says memory issues can sneak up on people." I stared at him. "Daniel, I manage multi-million-dollar school budgets every day. I think my brain is doing just fine." He laughed awkwardly, but I could see the seed of doubt had already been planted. That's when the uneasy feelings started growing. About 2 months before the retirement party, Melissa came over unexpectedly while Daniel was at work. She offered to help organize paperwork in my home office. While we were sorting through folders, she kept lingering on certain documents: bank statements, property records, insurance policies. At one point, she picked up a folder and asked, "Do you keep copies of all your financial records here?" I looked at her. "Yes, why?" She shrugged. "Oh, no reason. Just thinking about how easy it would be for someone to help manage things if you ever needed assistance." My stomach tightened. And then one evening, while Melissa was at my house for dinner, she stepped outside to take a phone call on the patio. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the kitchen window was open, and her voice carried inside. "You're not ready for what comes next." I heard her say something that made my blood run cold. "Yeah, we're almost there. We just need one clean incident." There was a pause. Then she added, "After that, it'll be easy." I froze where I stood. My heart started pounding. A clean incident. What did that mean? I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. Maybe she was talking about work. Maybe I misunderstood. But deep down, something inside me started whispering a warning. And by the time my retirement party arrived, that whisper had grown into something much louder. The party was held at a small community event hall in Phoenix. White tablecloths, warm string lights, a banner that read, "Congratulations, Susan Garcia, 38 years of dedication." When I walked in, applause broke out. Teachers I'd worked with decades earlier were there. Former students, now adults, came to shake my hand. One young woman hugged me tightly and said, "You probably don't remember me, but you helped save the after-school music program when I was in 7th grade. That program changed my life." Moments like that made every stressful audit and every late night worth it. Daniel gave a speech. His voice cracked slightly when he talked about how I'd held our family together after his father died. I pressed a napkin to my eyes. For a moment, all I felt was pride. Then Melissa stepped forward. "I'd like to add something," she said. Her tone was polished and confident. "Susan has always been incredibly strong. But one thing people don't always talk about is how important it is to have support as we get older." My stomach tightened. She was doing it again, right there in front of everyone. Her mother, Linda, was there too. late 60s, sharp style, bright red jacket. And she was asking the same kinds of questions Melissa always asked, about my house, my finances, my plans. "You must feel relieved knowing you can finally slow down," she said to me. Then she added, "Retirement can be complicated. That's why it's so important to have family guiding things." That phrase made my chest tighten. Later, as the buffet opened, I sat down at a table near the center of the room with my plate. Daniel was talking to coworkers near the stage. Linda was chatting with teachers. Everything seemed perfectly normal. I picked up my fork. And that's when Melissa approached from behind me. I didn't notice her right away, but I caught something in the reflection of a silver serving spoon resting on the table. A hand, Melissa's hand, moving quickly over my plate. I watched, frozen, as something small dropped into the food. Then she stepped back. When I turned my head, she was looking directly at my face, waiting, watching. And suddenly, every strange conversation, every suspicious comment, every warning my instincts had whispered over the past months crashed together in my mind. I was scared. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. A dozen thoughts raced through my mind at once. Should I confront her? Should I stand up and call attention to what I'd seen? But another thought stopped me. What if I was wrong? Accusing someone publicly at a party celebrating my retirement could create a scene that would follow me forever. And Melissa knew that. She had chosen this moment carefully. A crowded room, witnesses everywhere. If I reacted emotionally, it could make me look exactly what she'd been telling people I was. Unstable, confused, forgetful. So I didn't eat. And I didn't confront her. Instead, when the room turned its attention to another toast, and Melissa glanced away for just a moment, I did something risky. Linda had just sat down next to me. While everyone was focused on Daniel's speech, I gently slid my plate across the table and nudged Linda's plate toward my seat. The movement took less than 3 seconds. Hidden behind the centerpiece, no one noticed. And then I watched. Linda ate, Melissa watched, and about 15 minutes later, Linda started rubbing her temples. Her speech slowed, her movements became unsteady, her eyes went unfocused. Wait, it gets worse. Across the room, I saw the exact moment Melissa realized what was happening. Her body stiffened, her smile disappeared, and the panic on her face wasn't the panic of a worried daughter. It was the panic of someone watching a plan collapse. Linda could barely stand. People started whispering. My coworker, Robert, a retired police officer, called paramedics immediately. Melissa rushed to her mother's side, but she kept looking at me, not with concern, with anger, cold, sharp anger. And then, just before the ambulance arrived, Melissa said something to the room that made my chest tighten. She was fine until she ate. She looked directly at me. She ate from Susan's plate. The narrative had begun, and if Melissa had her way, I was about to become the person everyone blamed. Daniel called me from the hospital that night. The doctors suspected a sedative reaction, and Melissa had already told them Linda ate from my plate by accident. She suggested I might have mixed up the plates. Confused, forgetful, the exact image she'd been building for months. I didn't sleep that night, but I also didn't panic, because Robert had done something crucial before we left the party. He'd quietly preserved my original plate, the one Melissa had touched, inside a sealed container. Evidence. The next morning, I called a lawyer named Karen Whitmore, estate and elder law. Robert had recommended her. I told her everything, every question Melissa had asked, every comment about my memory, the phone call I'd overheard, the plate, the switch. Karen listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Mrs. Garcia, I'm very glad you called." She explained what I'd already started to suspect. Melissa wasn't just being nosy. She was building a case for guardianship, legal control over my finances, my property, my decisions. And the retirement party was supposed to provide the final piece of evidence. A public incident where I appeared confused in front of dozens of witnesses. Karen told me to act normal. Don't confront Melissa. Don't accuse. Let her think her story was working. When people believe they're winning, Karen said, they become careless, and careless people reveal their true intentions. 3 days later, Daniel called. His voice was tight. "Mom, Melissa spoke to a lawyer today. She's considering filing for guardianship. I need you to understand something before I continue. Hearing your own son tell you that his wife wants legal control over your life is a feeling I can't fully describe. I felt empty, I felt angry, and I felt afraid. Not because I thought she'd win, but because my own son wasn't sure which side to take. "Do you believe I'm confused, Daniel?" I asked him. He hesitated. That hesitation hurt more than anything Melissa had ever said. But then the lab results came back. Karen called me at my kitchen table on a Tuesday morning. There was a substance in the food sample, she said, a prescription sedative. It causes dizziness, confusion, and temporary cognitive impairment. Exactly the symptoms that would make someone appear mentally unstable. Exactly what Melissa had been describing to everyone for months. Karen's voice was calm but firm. This situation is no longer just about family disputes. It may involve criminal behavior. When Melissa's lawyer learned about the lab results, the guardianship petition disappeared overnight. Just like that, gone. The carefully constructed narrative, the months of planted doubts, the whispered concerns about my memory, all of it collapsed under the weight of one laboratory report. Daniel called me that evening. His voice sounded different, tired, older. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," he said quietly, "and the more I look at it, the less sense Melissa's explanation makes." He paused. "The only person who touched your plate before you sat down was—" He didn't finish the sentence. "I don't want to believe she would do that," he said. "I know," I told him. I didn't want to believe it either. Melissa moved out a few weeks later, went to stay with Linda. Daniel brought Emily over to my house, and my granddaughter ran through the door shouting, "Grandma!" She wrapped her arms around my waist, and I held her tightly. Moments like that reminded me what actually mattered. Daniel stood in the doorway watching us. "I should have trusted you," he said. "I'm sorry." "Sometimes people have to learn things the hard way," I said. Later that evening, after they left, I sat on my back porch watching the stars appear above the Arizona sky. Retirement had not begun the way I imagined. Instead of quiet relaxation, the first weeks had brought betrayal, legal threats, and a battle for my independence. But something important had come out of it: clarity. I understood now how easily trust could be manipulated, how quietly someone could try to take control of another person's life, and how important it was to pay attention when something didn't feel right. Because intuition, especially when it comes from years of experience, is rarely wrong. The night of my retirement party had almost become the beginning of my downfall. Instead, it became the moment I realized something powerful. No one gets to decide my life for me. Not my daughter-in-law, not a court, not anyone. After 38 years of managing school budgets, raising a son alone, and building a stable life, I knew exactly who I was, and I wasn't about to let anyone rewrite that story. If this story hit you in some way, leave a like. It helps me more than you know to keep bringing these stories to you every week. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in that moment? Would you have confronted Melissa right there at the party? Would you have switched the plate? Or would you have handled it completely differently? Because honestly, I still wonder sometimes if there was a better way. I read every single comment, so if you've been through something like this, if someone you trusted tried to take control of your life, I want to hear your story. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it. Every week there's a new story, and some of them are even heavier than this one.